and you're on the Parrot. And it's about 10 past the hour of 1 o'clock on this sort of jerkily Tuesday. Jerker. And yes, we're going bush. Don't we need the bloody trip? Coo-wee. I tell you what, I've been struggling around this city hunting up birds and animals. Even worse job than Scott, because I've had to thunder out into Carlton Exhibition Gardens. I saw a black-faced cuckoo shrike in the Exhibition Gardens. That wasn't too bad, was it?
That's great.
There's a highlight of my day, and thundering through the place, but looking at sparrows and bits and pieces in the city. But after a while, you just yearn for a bit of decent scrubbery. And I suppose one way of assuring that you're going to go there is to plan a bus trip for a lot of us. We've done it. Saturday, Greens Bush trip. What are you doing sitting there? When was the last time you went bush, you urban city slickers? It is about time you fair fired up. Get on the phone, 419-2066, and speak to the phenomena. Speak to his ears. He's waiting to hear from you. He's got the mail ready to go to you to tell you the brochure, times and details and all those bits and pieces. Cheapest trip, $20. Someone said I could drive for $20. Well, not the way we're going to go, Sean. And we're going to take the long route, and we're going to go where first? Where's our first stop besides picking people up on the way down?
Right, we're going to stop at Cape Shank and have a look there.
And look at Main Creek there too?
Main Creek, yep, which is runs out of Greens Bush, the swampland there. Runs out at Cape Shank eventually.
What's it like down there?
Main Creek?
Yeah.
Well, where do you say? You got gullies full of tree ferns and large eucalypts, wedge-tails nesting around the area. It should be quite good.
Yeah, so quite different to Greens Bush.
Yeah, it's a very diverse area down there. I think we'll be having a look at the whole thing. So we're going to have a walk up the Main Creek and to where it meets Lightwood Creek. Have a look around there.
Mm-hmm.
From there we'll jump back in the bus and travel round to the top of Greens Bush on the top of the ridge there, and have a look at the wetlands and and maybe have a barbecue up there or something.
Right, yes, barbie at the wetlands, and if you come, it's on the little brochure, but if you come, bring your own BBQ meat, and or if you're a veggie, your veggie burgers, or your fish, or whatever. And we'll probably have a billy on up there somewhere, I'd reckon. Give you a cup of tea, and have a poke around in that area. We'll have a look at the land that the government bought, and still hasn't recovered, has it?
No. Well, it's looking better anyway.
Looking better.
Looking a lot better, yeah.
Yeah, it will recover over a period of time. And we'll have a look at the land that they're yet to buy, and we'll have a look at bits and pieces. And
kangaroos?
Kangaroos, yes, there's still some left.
Yep, well, plenty there still, but, we'll certainly see some, I would say.
Right, and a good chance of running into a few orchids too at this time of the year.
Yeah, a few orchids up now. Maybe even a Latham snipe, one of the first ones down.
Right.
Might spot one of them.
When they're arriving now?
Yeah, well, from any time now. They resident here during summer down in southern Victoria, New South Wales. And Greens Bush is a prolific area for them. Counts of up to 35 to maybe, up to 200 birds are there, so pretty significant area for the Latham snipe.
Right, well, it'd be good to see the bird that we've done so much talking about yet again. And it'd be good for me to see them again. Of course, I'd sort of flushed so many of them before we realised that the density we were seeing was so much higher than what they existed elsewhere.
That's right, yeah.
All right, well, look, it sounds like an excellent day, and we might do a little bit of fossil hunting. There's a site there I wouldn't mind dropping into for a quick little bit of a dig. It's a place that you sort of don't often get around to going to. But anyway, it should be all out a really good day. I'll be there, Sean will be there, there'll be a few other naturalists bowling along as we offer them all kinds of incentives, like free trips and bribes of various alcoholic beverages and so on. And so it should be up and up a beauty, and he can give us a ring now, 419-2066, and join the bus journey down there. Good day. We'll leave about 8 in the morning and we'll get back about 7 in the night, so that'll also give you a chance to go out and do your deed, give you a chance to go over and see Scott over at Mullum Creek and go spotlighting and make your day a long and exhausting one in the bush, which is something that I think we all need.
And bring binoculars and gumboots for sure.
Yeah, gummies are a definite on. And there's a few other bits and pieces around in the news. Scott, there's a bit on the news about $1.8 million being spent by the timber industry to justify their rape of Australia.
Yeah, that's right. I was just looking at that, the usual propaganda to try and, as they say, point out to people that the forest industry is based on a totally renewable resource or something. And I see they're heading away from their last sort of tactics of bad-tempered greenies chained up against trees and trying to show the forest products. I think it is, and I think I saw one the other night, one of their latest
ads.
Yeah.
And what was that one?
Oh, just I think it was a kitchen scene showing the chairs, the tables, and the rest of it all made out of the timber.
Right.
And so when you've got that much money to spend on that type of thing, it sort of makes it difficult for the people that are trying to put out the truth that it's not a completely renewable, as in what's being lost when they totally desecrate these forests anyway.
Right, and I suppose it's also the other ecological values of forest and the other financial values of forest is something you're going to have to come to. With CO2 becoming such a prominent thing, the rise in carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere and the reflective hothouse effect that it causes, one of the greatest things it gives off CO2 is forests that have been knocked over and are burnt and just simply rot away. And also the leaf litter rotting by the thousands of tonne gives off massive amounts of CO2. And the forest also acts as a sink for CO2. Plants are the great users of CO2 in the photosynthetic processes.
Right. Yeah.
And they also produce stacks of oxygen from it. So when you knock over a forest, you lose on two sides. Maybe it is up to us. I tell you what, if you were ruler of the world at the moment, or you were boss of Australia's forest, you'd sort of say, right boys, stop. Because this CO2 thing's dead serious and we're going to get ourselves into a heap of strife unless we do something really seriously about it. And I think that's also the thing with forests, that the other economic impact of forests is not taken into account. Like if you start logging those forests, we'll end up a bit like Sudan every time we do it. Every time you clear vegetation, you remove the carrying capacity of the land to deal with, to hold water and to let it out slowly over dry years and to hold back floods in wet years. And I'm sure those values haven't been taken into account. And the $1.8 million they spent would be better spent on advertising. They could better spend on revegetation and research themselves into ways of getting into forestry on a far more ecological basis. This business of clear felling, of knocking everything over, surely must be a short-term solution, and it's too rugged a way to treat a really delicate and complicated ecosystem, something we don't see very often. An interesting article too cropped up in The Age on 22nd, which I think is Monday, and yesterday, and get your Latin dictionaries out and stop fidgeting, it says. Last week we reported that Cliff Green's screenwriter from Warrandyte and a Warrandyte resident has produced a musical from the local high school with a plot revolving around the survival of a plant called a sallow wattle, Acacia longifolia, as we put it. And Cliff Green based his play on the legend of a local Aboriginal tribe, the Wurundjeri, who died out when the wattle ceased to bloom in Warrandyte, and it has done so. And about that time too, says Beth Gott, Senior Lecturer of Monash Biology at Monash University, the foe of longifolia, Mrs. Gott maintains that Franz Walter, the wanderer who first publicised the legend of was a botanical Nong who did know Acacia longifolia from his Acacia mucrata. And a mucro, she says, grows in the area and is known as a variable sallow wattle, narrowleaf wattle, or the hook sallow wattle. Now, this sounds all innocent enough, but it's been the source of a hell of a lot of debate and controversy in Warrandyte State Park. The sallow wattle, and that's the Acacia longifolia, is growing right through Warrandyte State Park. It's said by a lot of botanical fraternity to be a garden escapee, and certainly nothing that you'd want to see planted back in the park. National Parks employees, on the other hand, disagree and say they've found it so widely and so extensively and growing in some really remote areas of the park and some really old trees that it was an original resident that simply disappeared after the most disturbances of gold mining in that area and has reappeared now that conditions are right. The mucronata species to be confused with is reasonably distinct and is not found there now. There's a whole lot of different bits and pieces in the debate. The Francis Vautier that Beth Gott has been quoted as saying was a botanical nong, did write an excellent botanical list, and this was back in the 1880s, 1890s, when not too many people could write, and certainly not too many people could put down a list of plants. He may have indeed had the story wrong, or he may have had it right. I suppose it'll be almost fossil pollen evidence that will prove the eventual point as to who's right and who's wrong. But an interesting debate and an interesting story for Warrandyte, and I think for people who live in Warrandyte, it's quite good that they've turned into a play. It sort of might make people think a bit more about where it's from. Of course, the whole source of that problem is this business of trying to get indigenous stock right, what's indigenous to where, and that's one of them. A couple other bits and pieces, and one that I'd really like to talk about. We're going to go into talk back about immigration. Seeing as everybody else is doing the immigration debate, we're going to do one today too, so don't ring now, but ring in a couple of minutes' time when we give a promo to it. But one thing that's been going on, and this was on the front page of, now it's been zapped off, but I think it's the Emerald Hill paper. This is an article about Lorna Stockdale. This is the woman who's really taken the St Kilda penguins to heart. Since about May of 1986, Lorna's been going down to the breakwater most nights. In fact, I think just about every night for the first 18 months, and watching the penguins come in. This penguin colony that is at the end of and around about the St Kilda breakwater has survived the ravages of dogs and people and cats and God knows what over a period of many years. They're still dying from being caught in various containers, those beverage, what are those six-pack things for your tinnies, you know, those plastic things, they get their heads through them and get caught up. Sean, we were down there last weekend and saw the penguins in question, also water rat.
Yeah, one water rat there, looked pretty...
Not last week, last week, yeah.
Last Tuesday,
Yeah. The water rat's a bit more like an otter than a rat.
Yeah, that's right. It's, it catches fish and darts around through the water, molluscs, I think, too.
And webbed feet.
Webbed feet, yeah.
Yeah, it uses tools a bit too, which makes an interesting animal.
Rock.
Yeah, it uses rockers to break its molluscs on, and you often see little piles of crabs and mussels and things on the rocks down there. A fantastic area, and also an area that contains quite a few acres of seagrass beds. Now, the St Kilda Council, you know, Turn the Tide Council, Swallow by the Tide, have completely abandoned this area now and say that they have to have a marina from economic necessity. Well, we'll see, because I think the economic necessity would dictate that they can't have a marina that involves filling over the seagrass. They're going to have to come up with a plan, regardless of how in debt they are and how trendified they're into their little groove down there, that doesn't involve hurting the seagrass. It's annoying to hear from some St Kilda residents that they don't give a stuff about penguins, but they're far more interested in what's happening to St Kilda socially. It's a funny thing that the marina is the pivotal development down there, and as such will generate heaps more development to follow, which will be the kind of thing that breaks down the social nature of St Kilda, which everyone's upset about. Also, the penguins, in looking after them, you tend to look after yourself, and the penguins are just one part, perhaps the most easily recognisable part, of the many hundreds of species that occupy that harbour area. Those seagrass beds were once extensive across a much greater area of the bay, and maybe it's the limitation of seagrass beds that's the limiting factor on the breeding of our fish. If we have so many acres of seagrass, we can't really afford to lose any. It's something that, when lost from Western Port Bay, had a catastrophic effect on the fishing industry there, something recognised by the government, and much money was spent in surveys and research. It was something, again, when seagrass was lost from Corner Inlet, Wilson's Promontory. It had an equally catastrophic effect upon that fishery there and changed its nature quite significantly. The bay does support a $3 million fishery, professional fishery a year, and probably $12 to $15 million amateur fishery per year, and the amateur fishery particularly goes right back into the whole economy of the state, with people buying boats and getting their outboard motors fixed and buying all the bits and pieces of gear and buying food and staying at these coastal suburbs over the weekend or going in there for counter meals and so on. It has quite an effect, and amateurs, I'm sure, would be really upset at the prospect of losing such an extensive area of seagrass, and at a time when really we should be saying, right, we've done enough damage to Port Phillip Bay, we've just about turned it into a septic pit. If we've got an area of the bay that has survived mysteriously and that is healthy, we should keep it. With the penguins, we had so many problems with the penguins. People seem to have short memories. In 1983, in that season, we lost almost an entire breeding year of Phillip Island penguins caused by food shortages. The principal source of nutrition for Bass Strait up this end of the world is Port Phillip Bay and the Yarra River that we all like to hang so much on for being so polluted. But polluted or not, it is a great source of nutrient, and the bay, being a big shallow dish, keeps that nutrient stirred up and usable and produces tons of algae, which goes along the food chain, producing lots of food for the molluscs, which produce lots of larval zooplankton, which feed lots of things like pilchards, which in turn feed the penguins. And the seagrass beds are absolutely integral to this because they provide the cover for so many species to breed in. When we've scooped the net through the seagrass beds, we've often found things like baby squid and tiny pilchards and larval forms of things like whiting and flathead even. So a really rich area, a seagrass bed that is yet to be surveyed for the diversity of life that lives in it, and nobody's yet to work out what contribution those few acres in St Kilda make to the fishing industry as a whole. And I think it'd be exceptionally surprising when you finally got it. Seagrass beds are meant to be among the most productive areas, full stop, that we know in any marine environment. And it's certainly not something we want to lose. How do we go about fighting it? We'll be putting together a booklet on the natural history of St Kilda, so at least when people go down there and walk along the piers and walk along the beach there, they understand something of the animals that live their lives virtually under their feet. As far as the penguins are concerned, the monitoring of that St Kilda colony is absolutely vital to understanding what's going on at Phillip Island. They could act like an early warning colony. They breed a fair bit earlier. We found an egg there in 1984. Professor Cullen found an egg there in June, which is some 2 to 3 months before the first eggs appear at Phillip Island. And they may give an indication through their breeding success as to what else is going on. Also, such a small population of penguins so close to the city is a marvellous tourist attraction. Now, people said, oh, you can't use them as a tourist attraction. Well, not in terms of Phillip Island, and who'd want to build another 1,500-tonne concrete ramp with 5,000 people with flash cameras on it? No, but in terms of just being able to walk along the beaches at Middle Park and see penguins feeding. And the day we went down, we ran into some people who'd just been for a walk along the beach. There's something that you might think of doing this evening yourself, and seen a dozen or so penguins in a pod jumping out of the water, following fish that were also jumping out of the water. A delightful sight for the city, and undoubtedly the penguins, probably from when I say undoubtedly, most likely the penguins that also use the breakwater. An area too that you can see seals in, coming in to feed on the pilchards that come into the harbour en masse. The pilchards don't come there for a holiday or picnic, or because they like being at the end of Fitzroy Street or close to massage parlours. They come in there to feed off the myriad of life that comes off the seagrass beds. So an entire ecosystem, what's it worth? Priceless. Should it be developed for marina? One answer, no. Why has it been compromised? Because the people making the decision don't have the knowledge and the understanding. The difficulty is that people within marine natural history and marine biology tend to be a little bit on the wayward side, and they tend to say, well, we've got seagrass beds elsewhere, so we don't need them here. Okay, well, a few more Gregorian chants to make you think, this time for the animals of St Kilda, which may be lost if all goes through with the plans, but then again, who knows? With the way people fire up in an election year, they might be saved after all. We're going to try a night spotlighting trip down there. We'll have a go tonight. It might be wet and miserable and all the rest of it, but that's for us, not for the animals. The southwesterly wind, which means the inside of the harbour will be nice and sheltered and clear, and should make it good for seeing things. So if you haven't been to St Kilda and you haven't seen the life, give us a whistle. We might even get a net together tonight, Sean.
I think we will, yeah.
I think we
will.
will.
A lot of copy pods in the water last week.
That's right. There were stacks. We put the light in and it just came up in the teeming millions of...
Just goes to show how much life is down there.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. Sort of, it was as good a response as we got on Northwest Island on the Barrier Reef to the light. And so something well worth seeing if you've been living in St Kilda, or if you're living elsewhere in Melbourne, you've always thought St Kilda was a polluted mess, or you don't believe us about the amount of life down there. Well, now's your chance to find out for a mere $4. So turn up at St Kilda. We leave about 6:30.
Yep, 6:30.
6:30, not incredibly sharp, but try to turn up on time, and I'll try not to bolt this week. I think we've got the time wrong or something. But we'll see you at St Kilda. There's a pavilion there you can stand out of the wind and that, and we'll see you there right at the end of the pier where the pier meets the land.
Bring torches if you got them too.
Yeah, bring torches. That's why it'll be a pretty dark night tonight, and watch where you put your feet. And we'll go down there. We don't go right out towards the penguins, but we always seem to see penguins in close to where we're walking around, because they're right in and around the harbour. And we've always been lucky and caught up with water rats, and some nights 3 or 4, other nights 5 or 6, and it could be a good night tonight. So there's another trip for you. Okay, a few more Gregorian chants, and we're going to come back with talkback about immigration and migration. Yes, Gregorian chants. a pleasant change from our normal riffraff. Thank you, Victor Marnie, for our the variety of music is provided, even if Gondwana Land did go through a bit of a crackle. Not to be held. It was a spot on the track, Mick tells me. It was one of those. It wasn't a scratch, it was this little lump, little vinyl aberration. Anyway, you're on 3RRR, and let's have a listen about Ricky Vengeance's birthday.
This Tuesday afternoon, Ricky Vengeance of RRR's Folk Show celebrates his 10th year on air, with the Vengeance Dance Band live in the studio playing all your folky favourites. Say happy birthday to Ricky Vengeance this Tuesday from 2 till 4 p.m.
Donahue and Stevenson, those immortals of the bar, give you Lawyers, Guns and Money on 3RRR every Saturday at 11 a.m. Lawyers, Guns and Money, brought to you by the G-Bar Polo Club, 85 Auburn Road, Auburn.
Yes, and Ricky's 10 years on RRR, not a bad effort for public radio. A lot of time put in on a voluntary basis there. Well, immigration debate, one that's hotted up and has got lots of incredibly unpleasant racial overtones. But what is the guts of it? How many people can we hold ecologically? You might remember us a couple of weeks ago reviewing an article by Judith Wright, which he argued that our plunder, rape and pillage attitude towards the landscape has hardly seen much in the way of reform, and yet we're still talking about bringing more and more people in. And why do people want to come here, and why are people starving in other countries? Well, many things can be put down to ecological disasters. Mass famine, mass starvation that we hear about from Ethiopia and Sudan is something that follows quickly on massive overgrazing, clearing of forests, right across the board, massive salinity. Australia has been warned many times that we head for a similar fate. Many of our arid areas, which we urbanites are thoroughly unaware of, and we're certainly unaware of the changes on, have undergone such changes themselves. Have you got feelings on the immigration debate, particularly in regard to how many people Australia can take? How many citizens can we have? How much water have we got? What will the next drought mean? The 1982 drought was our last drought, and that was pretty bad. Cardinia Dam got very low. Our main water supply catchments look poor. And really, is the carrying capacity of the land what we can do in good years, or is it set by what we can carry in worst years? What people should we be looking for? Should we take ecological refugees from Europe? Should we take the well-off people from Europe who are coming over here? Okay, they may have all the qualifications and skills that satisfy all these various bits and pieces that we're after, but are they coming over here with their money having stuffed their own environment to live in one that's more pleasant? Or should we be looking to people immediately adjacent? People like Vietnamese people, after all. We did spend a hell of a long time bombing their country. We dropped a lot of herbicide and a lot of pesticide to defoliate their forests, and don't we owe them some kind of debt? They're the kinds of issues that make people talk a lot, and kinds of issues that get a lot of feeling going. Well, let's put it in ecological terms. If you're interested in contributing to the debate, 419-6744, and we can hear your views and have your say on what's going on. And while we're waiting for calls, just to continue that line, what other countries should we be looking for to take our refugees from in the future? The CO2 increase in the atmosphere, if it does lead to a sea level rise of between 0.5 and 1 metre, is going to lead to a lot of people leaving the Pacific Island nations. It's been estimated in the paper today, some 300,000. Should we take those people first? Anyway, we have a caller already, 419-6744 if you want to contribute, and we've got someone on line 6. Hello, you're on air.
Hello.
Yep, you're on air on the Parrot talking about immigration.
Oh, am I live now?
Yep.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to make a few comments about the immigration debate. Firstly, I think it's pretty outrageous that none of the politicians concerned have mentioned the whole ecology issue. They've simply talked about races and numbers, and it seems to me very disappointing because, I'm interested in the ecology, and it seems to me pretty blatantly that we can't keep on forever taking in people and progress and expecting the environment of Australia to handle it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Suzuki mentioned a few weeks ago that it was an ecological disaster, and I agree with him. And we seem to be going backwards with the population we've got. how on earth we're supposed to cope with millions and millions of more people coming in. I've heard a figure like about the year 2100. Somebody mentioned, I can't remember who it was, that we may have 50 to 60 million people in here. I don't think that's good. And also I believe that we're one of the few countries. I had a friend from overseas a few years ago, and she thought it was marvellous that you could get away into the bush and really look right around you as far as you could see and see no little villages or houses or towns. And that's something that I think every person needs to be able to do, is get away into the wilderness. And I believe that's a huge asset, and you can't put a figure on that, but it's an asset that we have, and I think we ought to try and hold on to that.
Right. Do you think, apart from the wilderness debate, in which I suppose people could say, well, you're being selfish because, other people, just to get some land to live on, they give their eye teeth for. But one of the things that's come up, and you mentioned the ecological carrying capacity of the land, we all live on a very narrow strip along the east coast as the vast majority of the population. And do you get the feeling that that's where they want to put the next lot of people?
Absolutely. I mean, if people came out here, where they would want to live would be sort of around the southeastern corner or somewhere where there was fertile growing land or whatever. That to me is crazy. I mean, but the whole thing is, and the whole thing about numbers is that, and what no one has really addressed, except perhaps David Suzuki, when he says that, I watched a program called The Day the Universe Changed a few weeks ago, and it explained that the whole economic system that we've got is not compatible with zero population growth. It's still a hangover from the Industrial Revolution. We're expecting, our system is based on growth.
More people to consume more goods, more people to work cheaply as labourers. Yes, it is sad. Thanks for your comments, and we'll take another call. Sue, we've got you on line 5. Hello, how are you going?
I'm just wanting to make one point about the Asian populations. It strikes me that for thousands of years they've managed to support huge populations in very small areas with some pretty interesting intensive farming techniques. And I'm wondering whether we could be looking at different farming techniques for suitable pieces of land in Australia, rather than talk about not letting anybody in because we want to maintain the absolute wilderness. Maybe we should be talking about looking at different farming techniques.
Right, well, I think one of the things that was brought up in that regard was that in places like Java have twice the rainfall of Australia, despite its fact that it's a relatively small island. And that would be the biggest limiting factor. And if you've got stacks and stacks of rainfall and the high nutrition in the ground that follows, I'm sure you could support a hell of a lot more people. But we have so much of the country will support, well, you can just look at the number of sheep it supports, 1 or 2 per acre or 1 per 10 acres, that you're going to run into strife very quickly when you start adopting things. We can't put in intensive rice paddies in the arid zone of Australia, so we're going to be limited that way. But I agree with you that Asian people have been a hell of a lot more efficient with their land, but maybe you think that because this is Australia and not Asia, that we should be looking at farming our native stock and native animals and native plants a lot more intensively.
Well, I think that's possible, but I also think that in the urban areas we use far too much water, and that I think we're very wasteful of a limited resource. So maybe we should be looking at water usage generally throughout Australia.
You're not worried about having a population of 50 million, perhaps, as the last speaker said, by the year 2020?
I think that, I don't know, I mean, to me that doesn't seem like a real figure. It doesn't have any impact upon me. It sounds like a threat.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, look, thanks for your point anyway. Okay, and we'll take another call. Hello, you're on Talkback Now.
Yeah, g'day, look, it's Rob from Geelong. I'd just like to make just a simple comment sort of thing. I think one of the most important things is we shouldn't worry about where these people are.
That if we're looking at people coming into the country, it should be family reunion, which I think is necessary. They'll worry about bringing 80 and 90-year-old girls from Vietnam sometimes from that line. But shouldn't we be giving family reunion and people who are really genuine refugees based on need to stay here, to get away from an oppressive political system, a war zone, or an ecological disaster area?
Yeah, but how many people can we support?
Right, well, there's a problem.
No, that's sort of the whole debate, really, isn't it?
Right. Well, so you're not so much worried about skills, you're quite happy with the immigration to be based on need?
Sure, yeah. It doesn't really matter whether they're Asian or Pakistani or whatever, really. It's just the fact that they should be able to provide something for us, or at least contribute maybe in a tax sense or not.
Well, doesn't everybody who comes here in some way or another get hit by a tax? And don't you find that most people who come from another country who's so hard to make $5 are pretty blown out by being able to make 200 or 300 here when it sort of leaves us a bit unfazed?
Yeah, oh, that's for sure. But I just, well, as I say, I think it should be more on what they can provide for our country on a skill level, or even on a cultural level.
Okay, well, look, thanks for your call, and we'll take another one from Peter. G'day, Pete.
Well, how are you?
Good, mate. And what have you got to say about this immigration debate?
I just basically went on a research level of the stocks that we've got currently.
Right, so some kind of assessment of just how many people we can carry.
Yeah, well, also, like, we can look at subdivisions that are occurring now to cope with the population, and knowing that important patches of bush go into the dozer, and that if you increase that, then it only gets worse. And just whether any of the larger Commonwealth departments have yet to provide their ministers with any long-term data or any long-term research. I mean, I know it's hard for politicians to think in sort of 50-year or 100-year terms, but I think that's really important. And whether it has been done.
Right, well, certainly the subdivision proposed out that satellite city for up around the Plenty River and the Plenty Gorge was one that was didn't appear to be very well thought out, did it? It was no sewage, or the sewage was going to go into the river. There's no difference between it and any other subdivision in the last 10 years. It's not an environment being suggested that fits much better with the local ecology, and it's just adding more pressure to a city. There's no, since Hamer in those days, there appears to be no decentralisation. Do you think that we need to get a bit more ecological approach to our population as we exist now? Will that help the matters, Pete?
Oh, certainly I think ecological basis would do a great deal for the way we plan in the future.
Right. Okay, mate. Thanks a lot for your comments. And if you've got a comment, 419-6744. If you've got a comment to make on the immigration debate, and maybe you think the place can hold lots more people, we won't cut you off if you have opposing views. Maybe you think we should distinguish as a matter of race, and we won't cut you off either. But any comments you got, mate, 419-6744. Sean, what do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I'd hate to see a few more weirs going up around Melbourne's catchments, and I don't know, we'd have to sort of look in that sort of regard if we're going to bring in, was it 50 million by the year 2000?
Yeah, well, I don't know where that figure came from. It was one suggested, but I know some American dude came out here and said quite openly and easily that he expected to be, Australia's a great country and can hold another 20 or 30 million people, no worries. And it all seems to be just figures off the top of people's heads without any regard to looking at the resources that are around. Scott, you got any things on it?
Yeah, I think it's again a case where they're looking at the short-term sort of economics of the country and not really looking ahead. Whereas we could have a drought where if we've got all these 50 million people, whatever the figure may be, and we're put into famine maybe in the future as well. So I personally think that they've got to really take an ecological approach to all of these things, because that's what supports us ultimately, and that's surely economics we need as well. But unless you get the very basis of our survival fixed up and insured, and the rest of it, then we're not going to have any economics to worry about anyway.
Yes, I wonder what, it just worries me that we don't seem to be coping too well with the 16 million we've got now. And the politicians have an optimistic view that we can continue on forever, but even with the population we've got, with the rate we're going, I just wonder how many more worse droughts we'll run into and how many more agricultural disasters we'll run into in the future. America, of course, has got one of its worst droughts on record at the moment, right across their wheat belt, and a big percentage of their corn crops lost and so on. All these things have an effect. We have another caller, so we'll get some more comments. Hello, you're on air talking about immigration. I'm a parrot.
Yeah, g'day. I was just, you mentioned the article on the effect of rising sea levels.
Right.
And I was thinking, the reason behind it is that the sea temperatures are going to rise, or the temperature of the atmosphere is going to rise and melt the ice caps. Surely if the sea temperature is going to rise, then that's going to affect Australia's ecology. Don't you think perhaps we're going to have to look in terms of what's going to happen to our ecology in the future with regard to that, if we're going to talk about the effects of the rising sea level on the island and things like that? Don't you think that's going to change the picture as well?
Yeah, well, it certainly will. It'll change our coastline considerably if you up the sea level a metre. It makes quite a difference to the map, and who's to say it's only a metre? And sea level rises of a lot more than that have come a lot more suddenly. Might be a whole lot less. It seems we're in the land of unknown. But sure, and the economic impact of that, I don't know how the hell we'll go on coastal strips of land for insurance and in port and harbour facilities and all these kind of things. It'll be a rebuilding bill of just literally millions and millions of dollars. And sure, we've got a lot of hard thinking to do, but I think, as pointed out by Brian Watkin, I think it was, you look up his name, Brian Walker of the CSIRO, there's a lot of things happening there's other changes will come about in regard to, get Victor Marnie's attention there, other changes will come about in regard to changes in the general ecology of Australia that might enable us to get onto more kinds of development in regard to inland areas and stuff like that will become wetter.
Well, and you also could go the other way. If the temperatures are rising, you might have more droughts and things like that too. So yeah, it's really an unknown, isn't it? Yeah, it's a real differential effect. I think everyone can argue pretty well from their own point of view as to what they want to get across, and any barrow you care to push at the moment seems to be fair game. But what did you think? I'll throw in a little stray one about the arguments about CO2. If we have to get out of fossil fuel generation of power, that we have to go into nuclear power to avoid that. Yeah, sure. That's a really good point, because you've also got getting back to taking people from the islands that are affected by this sea level rise. Surely westernised countries such as ours are responsible for putting all this CO2 and other greenhouse gases into the air. So we've also got to look at that responsibility in those terms too. Right. Well, what do you think about the clearing of forests and the effect that has on CO2? Is that something we'll also have to look at? I think for sure. That's contributing in a big way. That's what I perceive the case to be anyway. Yeah. I mean, like the forests are the things that are in the air as the CO2. Recycling it, giving it more oxygen and things. So the whole setup's tied into this greenhouse thing. Forests and power, nuclear power, that sort of thing, fossil fuels, yeah, for sure. All right, well, look, thanks for your comments, and it's obvious that we have to think more broadly about a whole lot of things. And Kaz, you're on line 5. How are you going?
Hi, how are you?
Good, mate.
Just thought I might say a few words that I think about this bringing in Asians, and I don't want to sound sort of discriminatory, right? But I'd say we've got a big Koori problem here, we've got a big unemployment problem here, and I think we should clean up our own backyard before we start bringing other people into a troubled country. Now, have you been to Victoria Street in Richmond?
Yeah, right.
How many shops right along Victoria Street are owned by Asians?
Majority of crew, that mob tends to be down there, yeah.
Street in Melbourne that's owned by Kooris with shops.
Well, but I don't think Koori crew tend to spread through Melbourne. I don't think they threw Kooris out to live in Richmond, and there's all kinds of mobs, In Frankston, there's a whole lot of areas where there's a lot of English people live in.
And we've got this kind of thing of the poor refugees. We've got to help. We've bombed their country. We've decimated their country. What did we do to the Koori country?
I agree entirely, but do you really think it's an either-or situation? Do you think that we're actually dispossessing Koori people by bringing other people in?
I think you should be looking more at helping Kooris, helping the unemployed, before you bring Asians in, and they're in here 12 months, and they own streets.
But why discriminate against Asian people when there are Italian people, Greek people, English people from all over the world coming here? Surely, when you took in terms of unemployment and resources, yes, you do have to look at those things, but you'd have to think right across the board of a whole lot of people, wouldn't you?
I'm sorry, I forgot your last comment.
Well, wouldn't you have to look, why single out Asian people?
Because Asian people, all right, there were wars, all right, that was their country, and it was a political setup, all right? But we came here, we invaded Aboriginal territory. Now, the Aboriginals...
But why discriminate against Asians in that? Why not say about Italians, Greeks? I'm Scot. Why not say about Scots?
Well...
We all invaded Aboriginal territory, surely.
Put them all in the whole bag,
Yeah, that's right. Because don't make the point just about Vietnamese crew, because it's silly. There's no basis for it, is there?
our own unemployed, our own youth.
Mm.
Okay? Because I've seen the Asians, they get over here, they're bloody hard workers.
Right.
They work for what they get, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that other people can take them.
Yeah, but you know, it's still, you shouldn't discriminate against Asian crew, though. Surely that, you know, Greek crew are hard workers, Italian crew are hard workers, Scots crew can be hard workers too, despite contrary to popular belief.
Over to their countries and help them organise their problems there.
Okay, mate. Well, thanks for your comments anyway, Kaz. And we've got another call on line 6. Hello, you're on the Parrot.
I just wanted to say that it sort of concerns me that it just feels really selfish to talk about the Australian ecology as distinct from the world ecology. And it sort of, I really appreciate that we could completely stuff up the country by bringing in hundreds of people. But I sort of don't feel like we've got any right to deny anybody access. And that, if we can think in terms of, it's sort of like we're saying, well, Australia, a lot of it's sort of, or some of it's intact, let's hang on to it and keep everybody out. But it's sort of, if we think in terms of the world ecology and human needs all over the world and do something about that. I don't know if that's just really idealistic or...
No, what you're saying is got a good point to it, that instead of just accepting people, you know, a lot of our aid that's directed has been ecologically disastrous aid in the past, you know, sending eucalypts overseas to dominate the ecologies of other countries that aren't adapted to them is as bad as sending pine trees here. And I agree with you that it is part of the world ecology, but do you think that we should make the discrimination, though, as far as migration on the basis of need and not look so much at skilled people, but look at people from our near neighbours and close countries and countries like Vietnam that we've desecrated, that as people who should get some priority on the basis of their need to get out of a situation that we've helped develop in their countries?
I really think that immigration on the basis of need, need, because we have really so much to give, in a sense, that should be the only basis, really. I think all the stuff that people like Howard go on about economics and just anything talking about what people can do for us, I just think we really selfish. Appreciate what we've got.
Right, yeah, I think that kind of attitude, I don't like it either. It reeks of a kind of selfish self-interest. Come here and help build Australia for our businesses so we can be greater. Rather than saying, well, look, you know, you've got problems, we can give you some aid, and we can also take a few crew from Irian Jaya and from Timor and from Vietnam and from other countries that are in trouble in the future, and the Sudan and from Ethiopia, and help lessen your problems and maybe also contribute to the world ecology through research and through sending some of our skilled people overseas to work in those places.
Yep.
All right, mate, spot on. Okay, thanks for your comment. And we've got one more, line 5, Andrew. Hello, Andrew.
Hi.
How's it going, mate?
I just got a few comments about, there's been a lot of talk about all these Asians and all the different types of complaints about them, especially on a few shows on television lately. And I've worked on a few farms and stuff and worked out on a town out near Bordertown. And years ago I was working with an old digger, an old bloke who probably suffered from a bit of xenophobia in the sense that he was worried about the Japs and stuff. But looking down the road, say 10 years later, I can't help but really agree with him in a lot of things that he said about investments that are being made by foreign people, such as Japanese. And the problem is that the average Aussie or average bloke who's trying to invest in, say, land, for instance, is having trouble competing with just foreign investors. There was a program not long ago on the Americans that were trying, the average person trying to invest in Hawaii were having troubles with a lot of Japanese that had big dollars were buying out average homes, say 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 homes, and really making it hard.
Isn't the problem, though, more not to do with the race of the people, but to do with their disposable income? If you have crew with big stacks of money from any country in the world that come into a country that, in an economy in which they can afford to invest big heaps, that they're going to displace whichever indigenous people are there, whether they be Australians, Asians, Greeks, Italians, or whoever. And don't you think it's, to hit that Asian bug is a bit tough, isn't it?
Well, I'm not saying in this sense Asia. I'm saying really any.
Right.
And another point that I was trying to get to.
Make it rapidly quick, and we'll get one more call through.
Thing is that a lot of these people are looking at their own countries as what they're dedicated in, whereas a lot of people are investing in Australia and pulling the money out to help their other countries.
Yeah, well, look, you've made some good points, and we'll just catch off a little bit to get one more caller through. Okay? Thanks, mate. And we got one more caller here. Hello. We missed him, and we cut the last bloke off for it. That was a tragedy. You still there? We've just got the beat. Okay, well, look, thanks a lot for your calls today, and I suppose it's an issue that can deal with a lot more talking. Me, I suppose, well, we've got one more call, but just squeeze them in. Hello, you're on Eclectic Parrot talking about migration in the most rapid terms you can possibly do.
All right. I just wanted to make one comment, is that people don't understand that the Asians are not from one country alone, but they're from about, 50 different countries.
Or more.
Oh, yeah, but whereas the European migrants aren't collectively grouped as Europeans, like they're all, even like people from the UK collected as, grouped as people from Britain and Scotland. And so when we see 5 Asians on a street corner, we think, oh my God, we're being invaded, when really one might be from Malaysia, one from Singapore, and one from Vietnam, sort of thing.
Yeah, there's an absolute inherent racism in a lot of the way that even Howard and Hawke go about talking about it. I agree with you. Asian is anybody who's got slanty eyes. You can't help but come to that conclusion, and that's brown, black and brindle, who have eyes that are any different shape to ours, and then the rest are called by their country, whether they be German or Austrian. And I suppose there's Laps and Kurds and people like that who'd object even to those kind of broad generalisations.
Yeah, apparently even like Pakistan people are grouped under the Asian section in migration.
Right.
So broad, it's just such a broad spectrum, it's ridiculous, because, that's why the statistics are so up the creek. It says there are so many Asians, and really, there are a lot of Asians, but they're from, different countries.
Right, I agree with you, and as you can hear, and I can hear, the parrot is coming to a close end. Thanks a lot for your comments, and thanks a lot for everyone for their comments today. And it's good to see particularly the last caller making such good comments in regard to perhaps a bit of inherent racism that we all have. I myself find no problem with anyone. For all Homo sapien crew of various varieties, I'm happy to share the planet with any of them in any kind of mix or numbers, and I think that the rest of it's just paranoia. 2 quick mentions. Greensbush bus trip. Your last call, chance to call. Get off your bum. You've been listening to this series. Ring now, 419-2066. Speak to Vic Marnie, the Phenomena, and come down to Greensbush. If you've never been out in the bush before at night, go spotlighting tomorrow night, the end of Atherton Road. Mitcham, find it in the Melways. You can do it too. Saturday night, you can do it again. Sunday at the Nunawading Hall, you can go out for a day walk. There's all those things on. Tonight, spotlighting down at St Kilda. We're working our bums off to get you out into the bush, you urban city.